Next one we're talking about, Dalton, another a really good rivalry game that we have at 3:30 on CBS. That is the Iowa State Cyclones at number 21 Iowa. I think the really storyline to know in this game is, can Kirk Ferentz kind of continue his dominance over Matt Campbell? And Matt Campbell, listen, he's done a phenomenal job as Iowa State's head coach in his 9 years there. In fact, in 2020, Iowa State finished in the top 10 of the AP poll. That was the first time they've ever done that in school history. However, he's had a difficult time with his in-state rival because Kirk Ferentz and Iowa have won 7 of the last 8 matchups, and Kirk Ferentz has a 6-1 record over Matt Campbell. So Matt Campbell is really a phenomenal coach, but he's only beaten Iowa once in his career so far, and see if he could do it in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got contrasting styles, right? You've got some kind of the finesse in the passing game and the skill players of the Big 12 and Iowa State against just the rugged ground and pound defensive play of Iowa. We went over enough times with Iowa last year how they certainly lean towards the defensive side of the ball, right? But they at least looked functional on offense last week with Cade McNamara back. I think that's what it is I think there's more often in those 7 of 8 victories that you mentioned that Iowa's gotten to play their style of ball, right? So you have a contrast between the two teams, and I think the team that gets out ahead, just like Iowa did last year, I think that's the team that's at a big advantage in this game.
Absolutely. So, Dawn, you had the unfortunate task. We actually had Mitch Kaiser decide for us who would get the Iowa offensive side of the ball, and thankfully he picked you, not me, for this one. So what should we be looking out for when the Hawkeyes have the ball in this game?
So there's one, before I get into the matchup, there's something we need to talk about. We've talked about this now we talked about it Sunday, the year of the true freshman wide receiver.
Yes.
Max? There are so many true freshman wide receivers that are balling out right now that even Iowa got one. Yep. Reese Vanderzee, barely inside the top 1,000 recruits in the country, 6'4", 207, played quarterback actually his senior year of high school, 4-sport athlete, football, baseball, basketball, track. And he walks in and he has 5 catches for, I believe it was 66 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I read something that he was the first true freshman at any position to start under Kirk Ferentz in the season opener.
Wow.
Yeah. And now after his performance in that game, he is listed as one of the starting wide receivers.
Should be.
Moving forward on their depth chart. He's look, if they actually have a passing game, that you got a whole different ball game with Iowa, right? Last year they had injuries; they were just devoid of any function in the passing game. You've got McNamara back, you've got tight end Luke Lachey back. Now you've got Vanderzee, you've got a 6'4", 210 guy out there who can really move, go up and catch 50-50 balls. And look, don't mistake Iowa for a team that's could throw it 40, 50 times a game, but they need to be able to throw it 25 times a game with some sense of function. And honestly, the first 3 games last year before McNamara got hurt, or actually I should say before the Penn State game, and then he got hurt in the Michigan State game. But those first 3 games, they did look like a functional offense, and they looked at least like a functional offense last week. Had to get through some jitters in the first half and figure some things out. I think there's some small tweaks in the run game. But as far as the matchup go, I really want to get into Iowa State's defensive line.
Yeah.
And I know you're going to have some concerns about the trenches on the other side too, but they run their defense kind of weird. They have that 3-man front. A lot of times against spread offenses, they drop 8 and do things like that, but they just struggle to rush the passer. And you wonder if it was a product of losing Will McDonald in last year's draft, where now they just haven't replaced him, right? A 62.2 pass rush grade last year, 126 in the country. A bottom 5 pass rush win rate, only 21 sacks all season last year. This is a problem against any team. Even a non-premium passing team like Iowa, you can't leave any quarterback a clean pocket, especially a pocket quarterback like Cade McNamara. Even he will find a way to beat you, right? And I think a big thing early in last year's game, Iowa found a couple of explosive plays, okay? And you talk about, one, the 3-man front, and sometimes Iowa State sitting too far back. You give Iowa opportunities to run with all their tight ends and get into their running game. They completed a play-action shot that set up a touchdown. They had a long run at the end of the first quarter. Actually, the shot, I think, set up a field goal. The long run at the end of the first quarter set up a touchdown. Then there was a pick 6 that Rocco Beck threw right before the half, and before they knew it, the game was 17-0. And I don't care who you are. If you're down 17-0 to Iowa at any point, good luck coming back. Because this is a team that just, they hold you down. They're so good. They are so good at preventing explosive plays and making you work for every yard you have, and they have such a big advantage in the trenches in this game, at least on this side of the ball. And I know, look, Iowa's offensive line struggled last year too, but 4 of their 5 starters from last year are returning, and Iowa State, against North Dakota even last week, they only won 21-3, and they had some issues, especially on the ground, stopping the run, and they didn't get a ton of pass rush going against a team like North Dakota. Even though they only gave up 3 points, it wasn't the prettiest game they could have played. They had a hard time getting off the field. So I'm a little worried about Iowa State's defensive line holding up again against Iowa's offensive line.
Dalton, I have the same issue on the other side of the ball. Listen, I like a lot of what Iowa State has on this team. Miles Purchase is a really good corner. Caleb Bacon's a good linebacker. Rocco Beck's a good quarterback. Jaden Higgins is a great wide receiver. They have issues in the trenches, man. They have serious, serious issues in the trenches. In fact, their biggest issue last year was the offensive line. They had the lowest graded offensive line in the country last year at a 47.4 and second lowest in the country, and lowest in the Power 5. They also were the Power 5's worst offensive line in pass blocking and run blocking grade. And they brought back all 5 starters from last year, but they really struggled to get any movement in the run game this past weekend, even against North Dakota, an FCS opponent. They had a 49.9 run blocking grade, which was the 3rd worst mark by a Power 4 offensive line in week 1. So even against an FCS opponent, they weren't getting pushed in the run game. Now, listen, they were doing well in pass protection. So that at least was a bright spot, but they weren't getting pushed in this run game at all. And last year, Iowa's defense led the country with a 93.6 run defense grade. So I don't know if Iowa State's going to get anything going in that ground game, because I don't know if that offensive line has really improved at all. It was the biggest issue with the team last year, and at least through week 1, I mean, in run blocking wise, it's the biggest issue this year as well. So I do like a lot of what Iowa State has in that defense, in that second and third levels of the defense, and in the quarterback and receivers they have on offense. But if they don't get anything going offensive line-wise, I really think Iowa could dominate them on front.
I agree. It's a huge problem, especially when you consider the style of ball that Iowa plays, right? And the talent. They lost Cooper DeJean, but the talent they still have on their back 7. Iowa State last week against North Dakota basically won the game because they could just do anything they wanted on the outside, right? You have a really good trio of receivers. Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, who made just a spectacular catch on the very first play of the game, and Eli Green, the transfer from North Dakota State. Ben Brahmer at tight end. Rocco Beck's a really good quarterback. I think he's one of the better quarterbacks in the Power 5. But you're playing a team in Iowa with Xavier Nwankpa, Quinn Schultz, Jay Higgins in the middle, Nick Jackson in the middle, Jamari Harris at corner had an interception.
Sebastian Castro, yeah.
Sebastian Castro is a monster in the slot, best slot corner in the country. They had the lowest, they allowed the lowest percentage of 15-plus yard pass plays in the country last year by a whole percentage point, which for that metric is a lot. Iowa makes you work for it. Even last year when they played Penn State and Michigan and Tennessee, they didn't get shredded in the passing game. They just don't. They don't give up big plays. They sit back. They're so fundamentally sound. Their landmarks and coverage are just perfect, and they're one of the best tackling teams in the country. If you're going to beat Iowa, you have to be physical with them, right? And all those teams are, right? Michigan's physical with them. Penn State was physical with them. Tennessee ran all over them. Nico Iamaleava had 3 rushing touchdowns in that game. That's how you beat Iowa. You got to be more physical. If you think you're going to go out there against Iowa and just chuck up go balls and your receivers are going to win that battle, you're going to have a long day.
Absolutely. So, Dawn, who wins the matchup of the Cy-Hawk rivalry is what it's called, actually. So who wins the Cy-Hawk version of 2024?
It's one of the better names for a rivalry in college football.
I think it's kind of unoriginal in some ways. It's just like Cyclone and Hawkeye. I kind of love it. It's just like, Cy-Hawk.
It almost sounds like just a new creature they're creating.
Sounds like a Marvel character. Cy-Hawk.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, no, you know what? I got to be honest. I came into this thinking I was going to pick Iowa State to win. And the more I watch both these teams and watch last year's game, and this time it's at Iowa, I just think Iowa's, their style of ball, if Rocco Beck doesn't find explosive plays somehow, and against this defense, I'm not sure how he's going to do it. You can't just throw up jump balls and hope they're going to catch them all. You have to run the ball. You have to run block. You have to, even on the defensive side, you can't lose. You can't decisively lose the battle in the trenches, especially against a team like this, and think, okay, we're going to win a ball game anyway, right? And they have to avoid turnovers. They had a huge pick 6 in the game last year that Beck threw. Iowa State, we're going to talk about them a lot this year. They're going to be better. I just think this is a style of play that doesn't work to their advantage. And for as much as Iowa struggled last year, with Cade McNamara in there, they have a functional enough offense. They have a spectacular defense, a top 10 defense, if not higher. I've got Iowa winning 19-10 in a low-scoring game.
Okay. I think it'll also be a low-scoring game, and I also have the Hawkeyes winning. I have 20-13. I think Iowa is going to dominate in the trenches on both sides of the ball, offensive line and defensive line, and win in a defensive slugfest. And yeah, you mentioned Ben Brahmer. Excellent tight end. I'm a huge fan of Ben Brahmer, man. He was a really good tight end in his true freshman year. But you have Xavier Nwankpa, you have Quinn Schultz, and those guys. It's like I just think Iowa is going to match up so well with them defensively. And if they're winning, dominating up front like I think they can, then it could be really difficult for Iowa State to get anything going offensively this game. So I have 20-13, my final score for Iowa over Iowa State. Once again, Kirk Ferentz beating Matt Campbell.